All right, so in your advanced method book, volume 1, turn to page 6 and exercise 6. The first thing we'll want to look at is the key. The key is in C major, so there's no sharps or flats. So to make it a little bit easier on us. It is a 2-octave scale. The first thing I want to talk about is what they're saying on the 4th note. It's saying fork F. And so a lot of oboes, there's 3 different ways, or some oboes, or there's 2 different ways on how to play the F. So the standard way is typically here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then you have this key here. The other way is called fork F. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, and then 3. That's the fork F. Now generally, we want to play the standard F because it sounds just a little bit better. Whenever you play fork F, the notes sound a little more huffier, and sometimes the tuning isn't as good either. But it's not necessarily wrong. Sometimes you have to play it. So I'll kind of give an example of that real quick. So here's the standard F. Here's fork. And back and forth, standard. So you can see the sound is a little more huffy. But again, sometimes some keys you really have to play the fork F. So there's also a third way to play an F. So here's standard again, fork, and then you have left F right here. Now, if your oboe doesn't have this it's okay. And so you'll be going back between fork F and standard F. If you do have fork F or the left F, then that's going to be another one that you can use for different passages. So it pushes down the same exact mechanism on your instrument as the standard F does. So at the very beginning, if your instrument does not have the left F, what you're going to be playing is what it's saying is the fork F. All right, from the very beginning, you're going to be starting on C, and let's keep going here. So C, E, D, and then F. So you're going to want to use fork F. And then the challenging part is when you go from fork F to E. So there's going to be this flip back and forth. And you can practice that really slowly just to kind of help you get used to that motion. Now, if your instrument does have the left F here, you would want to use that instead of the fork F for this whole entire piece. Because if you try to use the standard F here, you're going to have to like roll your fingers up to be able to get to that. And so that's why they're saying to use fork F. But again, if you have the left F, use that instead. From the very beginning, we start off on a low C. Now this note is, it's a little bit harder to respond, especially if you don't have a reed that is really responsive to low notes. One thing that I would write in your music is that you're going to play this in forte or loud from the very beginning. Don't be shy and back off on that first note. You really want to give it full volume and to give a good tone. Being able to put enough air into the instrument will allow that low C to resonate well right from the beginning. It can really catch you off guard whenever you try to play that first note in the audition and all of a sudden it doesn't respond. And so just make sure you're putting a lot of air in, especially since there's not a dynamic marking marked. And so another method that will help with low notes to respond is making sure that your embouchure is set up correctly. So whenever you are getting ready to play that low C, have it set on your lower lip. Make sure you're not pushed in. So pushed in will be like that. And so almost where you can't even see the reed anymore, you only see the thread. That'll be your embouchure should be too far in. So whenever you have your reed that far pushed into your mouth, it really creates like a really harsh tone, and it also allows the low notes not to really speak that well. Another thing too is you want to have enough cushion on your lips. You really don't want to be smiling kind of like that, having thin lips. You want to make sure that your embouchure is forward so that the first note will respond really well. Now, I know that was a few different things, but let's do each one of them on their own. So get your reed ready, and remember we're going to play the first note forte. Make sure that you're not too far in, you're closer towards the tip of the reed. Then you're going to take a big breath, and then make sure that you have enough cushion on your lips so that you're not smiling. And here we go. All right, and let's do that again. So read here, take a big breath. And so that time, actually, my notes spoke a little bit better because I made sure to actually set my embouchure before I blew. So continue to practice that, just that very first note, just that low C, and make sure to have a really good tone and make sure you're doing all those things. Some reeds can be a little bit of a challenge in order to get that out. So make sure that you're playing on a newer reed, or go through maybe a couple different reeds and see which one responds best in the lower register so you can practice this. Another main thing that I really want to point out, so at the very end of the first line of exercise 6 here, there is a fingering chart, and it shows you right there how to play high D. Now, I do want to make one change to this because they're leaving out one thing that I want you to add. So let me kind of point this out. Right here. So that's the fingering chart, and so I circled it here. Now, what I want you to add is going to be this. So to play high D, it's going to be half, 2, 3, and then your pinky on your lower C, but that's what they're showing. But I also want you to add the middle finger on your right hand, so just like that. And so that's going to help bring the pitch down just a little bit because naturally high D is sharp. That's just going to also help the note to respond slightly better too. Grab a pencil, and then I want you to mark in that right there, and I'm going to mark it so make sure that it looks the same as what I have here. So you can see now it's half hold, 2, 3, and then now you have the middle finger or 2, and your C key. C key is right here. One of the best ways to practice through this is go through it note by note, very slowly, and make sure that you know all the fingerings. And kind of pay attention to where there's some blips or some things that are kind of catching you off guard, and just practice between those 2 notes very slowly. Another really important thing for all region, and then I'm going to continue to kind of stress throughout this, is to have a metronome. And so this would be kind of similar probably to one you have, or you can even find an app on your phone that will do the same thing. So I have mine set to 60 here as a recommendation, just as a starting point, and if you're still having trouble missing some of the notes, go ahead and slow it down just a little bit. The metronome will really help keep you consistent in playing through this. It also helps you not to practice in mistakes. So when you try to play through it, your tempo might not be as consistent as if you have a metronome, for sure. And it'll help you get used to having a consistent tempo with a metronome. And also you can start speeding up the metronome 1 click at a time and get your speed up to where you want it to be. And so I think a good place would be about 60 beats per minute. So that'd be like this. And beginning. And I'll stop there. And then what you can do after you play it at a slower tempo is go ahead and increase the tempo just by a couple. So I start at 60, I'll go to 64, and then I'll play through it again a little bit faster, and then increase it by 2 to 4 beats per minute. So now at 68, and eventually you're going to kind of hit a speed that is, you're going to even want to go just like 1 or 2 notches instead of maybe 4. The goal is to not really play this fast, but to play it at a consistent tempo, and to be able to play it evenly between every single note. And also starting it slower will help whenever you have those blips. A blip would be an example between whenever you go between A and C, like this. So the first 2 times I played it right, and then the second time you kind of hear I over-exaggerated there, but It's a little bit challenging because you have to get your first finger down and get this one up at the same exact time. So playing through that at a slower tempo will help you get used to it before you speed it up. The next one that I want to talk about is the common chord. This is an arpeggio. So this is on page 6, and this is number 7. Again, we'll look at the key first. We are in the key of C, so there's no sharps or flats. Again, we're starting on a low C, so we really want to make sure that we have our embouchure set, we're putting a lot of air through the instrument, and we're not pushing in the reed too far. This one is a little more challenging than the thirds, but it is shorter. So this is one piece that you really want to play through slowly. Have your metronome on a low tempo. Make sure that you're playing every single note consistently. And you might find there's going to be a lot of those potentials for blips in here. So a method to be able to practice this would be first play through G and C. G and C are your third and fourth notes. So here's G and C. And then now I didn't tongue those so that you can hear if there is a blip or not. The next thing you can do is to play fast short. So it would sound something like this. So fast short, and it's like this. And you can reverse it, long, short, long, short, long. And so that'll help really get rid of some of those blips that you might hear. So going from the beginning, play through it at I would recommend probably at 55 on your metronome. That's about here. And then make sure your embouchure set, you're blowing lots of air, and your reed isn't too far in. And so around that speed. Whenever you're practicing, another really big pointer would be just to relax. Oboe, there could be a lot of tension, especially with such a small reed, lots of air, lots of back pressure that's being involved. And so just every once in a while, just roll your shoulders, roll your head, take a few breaths and make sure your shoulders are down and relaxed. And while you're in that relaxed state, bring your oboe up and make sure just everything is still relaxed, even the inside of your mouth. And so just taking a few deep breaths in and out will be able to help just relax your mouth too. So kind of doing all that. And then bring up the instrument, still relaxed. Take a breath, then make sure you're relaxed too, and whenever you play, you're relaxed. Because whenever you tense up, your sound can also start to become thin and not as warm. All right, thank you.